Hi, everyone. Welcome to Boston.com's Restaurant Roundtable. My name is Erin Kushner, and I am the food writer for Boston.com. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with our panelists today about the state of the restaurant industry and what the future holds for Boston's dining scene. I think it's going to be a great conversation, and I'm really happy all of you could join. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to kick it over to Dan Schertzer with Capital One Café. He is a faithful customer of all these restaurants, and he's going to deliver some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Erin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Schertzer, and I have the pleasure of leading the Capital One Cafés of the Northeast region, including the greater Boston area. And I'm really glad to be kicking off the conversation today. At Capital One, we believe financial well-being is made possible by everyday well-being, whether that's focusing on achieving greater mind-body balance, growing your community, or reaching your financial goals. The cafes are designed to reimagine the baking experience by empowering people to feel more confident in their relationships with money and stress less about their financial journeys. It's a space where you can focus on personal or community growth, find ways to simplify your finances, or kick back and relax in comfy spaces, all with your favorite coffee drink. You can also take advantage of money coaching. It's a cafe experience that is also now offered virtually. This program helps you plan out your goals in life and think through how your financial behaviors connect to those goals, whether you bank with us or not. The cafes also serve as a community hub where we offer free meeting spaces, like you can see behind me over here. There you go. And nooks for community organizations, student groups, and nonprofits, with more than 40 locations nationwide, with more opening by the end of this year. Capital One Cafes are the perfect blend of banking and living. You can learn more at CapitalOne.com/local. We believe in building spaces that help facilitate great conversations. We believe a strong community is built by healthy individuals and strong businesses, especially local businesses. That is why we are so proud to present this discussion today with leaders from our local restaurant community. So with that, I pass it back to Erin, who will be leading the conversation today.
Thanks so much, Dan. For all of our attendees, just as a reminder, this discussion is being recorded and will be available after the event. And we also have a Q&A button right there at the bottom. So if you have any questions during the roundtable, feel free to ask questions there, and we'll try to answer as many as we can in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so. And with that, I would love to introduce our panelists for today's roundtable. We have Bessie King, General Manager at Villa Mexico Cafe, Joanne Chang, co-owner at Flower and Myers and Chang, and Jonathan Gilman, chef and owner at Brado Brewhouse and Kitchen. Thank you all so much for being here. Hi, everyone.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Great. We have a lot to cover today, but I thought that we'd start with a bit of reflection. We recently marked 1 year since the initial shutdown of restaurants in Massachusetts. And so looking back over this past year, what are some of your initial reflections on what you and your businesses have gone through and things that are kind of top of mind as we pass this anniversary of sorts, I guess? Bessie, do you wanna kick things off?
Sure. No pressure. Well, thank you for having us. Obviously, this is a very important conversation because without restaurants, communities aren't built. It sounds like a big statement, but that really is the truth. Restaurants really bring a community together. And I think that was the main number one lesson, if not experience from last year and even from the beginning of the pandemic, that community really is so important. And that is one of the reasons why at least we at Villa Mexico have been able to survive, not just within the community of our industry, restaurateurs helping each other, but the community of our employees being willing to stick around and work, and the community of our customers to learn really what it is that we do, what it is that it takes to keep us going, and what it is that their role will be to keep us around.
I can definitely echo that. I think that community has been a huge part of this and part of the last year. We've seen from doing over 80 different virtual events throughout the course of the year that there's a lot of people that just want to stay engaged and want to still feel as though they're part of something. When we went into lockdown, like it's so easy in this industry to focus on like what we do as a craft to be the most motivating point, be it food, drink, whatever it is that you love to do, that tends to motivate you the most. But I think that really shifted once we realized how much we depended on each other and having that community sort of involvement and that sense of activity together. That's really what it's all about. It's great to be able to set the table, but it's even more fun to be able to dine at the table with other people. So definitely looking forward to doing that again. It was great to do it virtually, but hopefully as we've done a year of that, we can take less for granted the time we have with each other when we're in person.
I agree with both Bessie and Jonathan. I think this last year has really shown me and Christopher, like we've always known what an incredible restaurant community we have. And we've all kind of known, either we know each other or we know of each other and we all support each other. And that really came out this last year. I feel like it was awesome to see just different pockets of restaurant groups and people kind of joining together to help each other out. And it was pretty amazing. What we also learned was how incredibly resilient our teams are. We had people who, once we closed down for a little bit, and then when we reopened, people came back and said, put me where you need me. I used to bake cookies, but I'll wash dishes, or I used to make sandwiches, but I'll pour coffee. And just seeing how flexible and resilient the teams are was pretty awesome to watch. I think another thing that kind of surprised us is how many people don't have a safety net. I think a lot of what some of this legislation that's going around to help restaurants is to help us get back on our feet so that we can then help our team members who don't have a safety net. That was a pretty big shock to us, the number of people that we employ that were not able to qualify for unemployment or get any of the benefits that were helping some of the others. So we're certainly, like everybody else, looking forward to trying to get some semblance of normalcy so that we can continue to help those team members.
So there's been some good news and some signs of progress lately, including the passing of the relief bill, resurgence of outdoor dining, vaccinations are now available for restaurant workers. What should diners know about the challenges that you're still facing? And are there any new challenges that have arisen even as reopenings are underway? John, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, it definitely has been a overall good news. Obviously, we've seen a very slight uptick in the news with the numbers here that I'm sure everyone on this panel is like, you always see the daily numbers as they come in. So keeping an eye on that, I think what that's actually sort of indicative of one of the challenges is that it's very exciting what we're about to go into. We're about to have this opportunity to sit outside, to have brunch again. That's something that people haven't had in many months, be able to see friends, but we're just not quite over it yet. And I think that that's becoming pretty clear. And to be both a business that supports and encourages people having a good time and all this sort of stuff, to also sort of be the Debbie Downer on that and say, we're not fully there yet, I think is one of the challenges, because we're all excited, I think, to get to that end goal. Another thing I think is one of the challenges as we come out of this winter is that we're coming out with staffs that generally, as both other panelists have pointed out, have done a great job in being resilient, have gone the extra mile, have been asked to do things that are just not reasonable to ask people to do. And they're coming out of a winter where it was at its hardest point, and we're not exactly refreshed going into it as a team. And I feel as though a lot of people need to understand that people have been through a lot in every factor or in every industry, but in this industry where it's been so front facing, those effects still are reigning true. So as we get busier and the demand gets higher, it's not easy to scale up as it might seem. But we're still working with it, and these are good problems to have, problems associated with reopening versus locking down, but there's definitely still issues to be tackled as we get over the hump.
Yeah, we're facing a lot of the same issues. Something that has continued to be brought to our attention is that everybody is really tender and sensitive, even though they might not show it. And I think in the hospitality industry, it's our jobs to come to work every day with a smile and to give great service and make great food. And I think this last year really taxed everybody. And even though they might not be showing it on the outside, when you go to a restaurant, most likely, outside of the restaurant. There's a lot of uncertainties and just really, really sensitive and very emotional people. We find this a lot at work where, we go in and we know to just put our heads down and do the work, but when you take somebody aside after a while, you realize that there's a lot going on that they're struggling with. We're also finding that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine, but once you're vaccinated, people still need to wear masks, and we have some guests who feel that they don't need to, and that puts a lot of our teams feeling really sensitive still. So I think there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty out there that is really challenging. And then I think finally, something that we're just starting to hit upon now is that, yes, we're trying to reopen. Yes, we're hopefully going to do indoor dining soon. Yes, the patios are opening up and business is getting a little bit better. But a lot of people are still able to collect unemployment, and because of that, they might not be as interested in coming back. And so we went through this period where we had no jobs, but now we have jobs, and yet people are not necessarily wanting to come back because they can continue to collect unemployment and the stimulus, which makes it a little bit challenging for us. So, we're in this weird, like, in-between place. We're not totally shut down, but we're not totally open back up. And so trying to navigate that from a bunch of different levels is definitely challenging.
Absolutely. And I think, to touch upon what Joanne just said about the sensitivity, we lost people in our crews too. We lost employees to COVID as well. And that can't just be ignored. So when you put the burden of responsibility to enforce those masks or to suggest a vaccine, it's not just the consumer that has to be responsible. You're putting it on us, right? And we've already done that for a year and 3 months up to now, or like at least, a full year of please wear your mask, please stay distant, please follow the rules, blah, blah, blah. So I really think that the customer, I usually have been saying this for a while now, we're entering the age now in America, because everywhere in the country, around the world, the customer isn't always right, except here in the US. Like, I've been to other countries and they're like, you don't like it, you eat it, right? We're not like that. But I think that maybe not around the food, but around the service and the shared responsibility, the customer is going to have to start realizing, no, you're not always right. And we have bared, the brunt of this pandemic more than any other industry out there, because you were still getting your food delivered while you were working from home. So just out of that respect for the dedication that we have continued to show, we really need to make this a partnership and effort to be able to move forward. And I can guarantee you also, to what Joanne said, all of us are struggling to find employees right now, not just because they maybe, God forbid, were lost to COVID, but because a lot of people moved to other states where the rules weren't as strict as Massachusetts. A lot of people have quit the industry altogether because indeed they are burnt out. So when you come back to restaurants, service is going to be different. Service may be a little bit slower. That's the reality.
Thanks for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about the relief bill, which includes $28.6 billion for restaurants. I'm curious what that means for your business and also your businesses and also the industry at large. And I'm also curious to hear what can be done to ensure that there's equity in how it's being distributed, that it's getting to the people who need it the most. So if anyone wants to jump in on that.
I think that this bill is like the PPP loans, the 2 rounds. It's a lifeline for all of us. Different restaurants are at different places in terms of feeling, financially insecure or secure, but just having a little bit of relief and knowing that, we can't seat tables the way we used to. We can't space out in the kitchens the way we used to. We've been forced, and understandably, to restrict the amount of business that we can actually, take. And that's very non-intuitive to us. I mean, I think for all of us, it's like, yes, let's push, let's do more, let's take more covers, let's try to do more. And now we need to go the other way for everybody's safety. And so, having this grant and having the PPP loans allows us then to not worry quite so much that the sales aren't high enough to support all of the fixed costs that we have, including the additional costs that we're all paying now. I mean, now we're all paying for way more gloves, way more, plexiglass and tables and barriers and whatever it is that people are doing in their different restaurants. So it's a lot of added costs that, we didn't used to have to, a year ago, that we weren't spending. In terms, I think this is such a great question in terms of how to make sure that this loan is getting to as many people as possible, the smaller restaurants. And I know that the government has earmarked a certain amount to smaller restaurants. I know that if we need to get neighborhood groups to get more involved to help with the restaurants. And I also think for all of you, like if you go to a small neighborhood restaurant that is not a chain, where they don't have, some like lawyer or CFO or whatever that can help them navigate through all of this, you should ask to speak to the manager and see if they are aware that this grant program is out there and that they probably qualify and that it's money that's meant to help them continue to operate. So I think maybe even just a grassroots program where everybody who's on this call, you go to the 3 restaurants that you like that are independents and just make sure that they're fully aware of how they can apply for this program. I mean, honestly, we don't know exactly how yet, but I think everybody in this call knows somebody, or we have somebody on our teams that can help us with it. But a lot of restaurants don't necessarily have that support.
It's a good thing that I'm on mute, because I'm over here saying like, yes. So like two main things. And the one thing is, yes, this is a lifeline, absolutely. But within 10 days of the pandemic, the airline industry already had relief in place and a way for those companies to figure out how to get their money. That, number one, this took too long. And if it were not for restaurant owners, many of whom are here or, listening, through, the Independent Restaurant Coalition and the MRAs or the NRA or the Mass Restaurants United that we organize here in Massachusetts, if it weren't for us literally shouting to people and leaders in government saying we need help, this bill would not have gone through. The fact that it took so long for us, the restaurant industry, one of the largest nationwide that employs and generates billions at a national level that trickle down into a lot of industry, is just shocking, not to say an expletive, right? But that's the truth. So it took too long. And then the second thing is the process, exactly what was just said, is overly complex. So it is not in another language. It is not easily done, because you have to have a DUNS number and a SAMS number. And then once you have those 2 numbers, you are allowed to submit the application so that you can get a cage number. And it's a variety of soup letters that you don't know where you're going to be able to apply for these grants. And exactly it. If you don't have someone guiding you, you're not going to know. So I love that idea of, if you are in a community and you have that special restaurant that you love, or that little business that maybe they're not English as a first language, pro bono your services. If you're an accountant, a lawyer, a secretary, someone very, internet friendly, this is your moment to shine in your community, because it is extremely necessary. And because we are not that big fancy airline industry, and not to pick on them, I love to travel, granted we need airplanes, but we're not them. So we don't have those mega powerful allies. We really need to do it with each other. So yes, thankful that we are gonna get hopefully funds, but very jaded at the same time, and we need community again.
I think those are all spot on. I mean, it definitely came too late. We had to do a lot of planning in the restaurant industry, where we started to take on PPP draws, even if we weren't sure if they could be forgiven. Now, in hindsight, it would have been better served to have waited for this grant to come out, because the grant is sort of something that's a grant. There's no forgiveness process. There's no gray area. You're not paying a high level accountant to make sure that your books balance in just the right way so that you can get the assistance that you're looking for. So I do think that there was a lot of issues with that coming out late. Now that it's here, it definitely is useful. And I feel like, to echo some of the points being made, now the challenge is making sure that people understand what parts of it are useful. Like, if I got 1 or 2 draws in the PPP program, can I still get the grant? You have to figure out that math. And if not, what are other ways they can get things? There's the employer retention tax credit that no one at all is really talking about, that was attached to this bill that extends through 21, that in terms of real dollar impact is close to that of a PPP loan, but you would never know about it because it doesn't get full coverage. So I think that equity in services of like accounting and lawyers, but I also don't feel as though we need to put the onuses on accountants necessarily. It'd be great if they stepped up, but really the responsibility lies in local government officials, neighborhood representatives that, you know, if they represent specific wards and districts, then they should be going door to door to their constituents to do that in order to really be going through. So I think while it'd be great, I think a grassroots movement would be amazing. But I think the responsibility truly falls on the heads of the people that are in office that we vote in every couple of years.
And again, John, I'm jaded. That's why I'm just like, please, neighbors, help each other.
Yeah, we relied on it. I mean, like, we actually were so jaded by the government process that we did a crowd fundraise in late winter with Mainvest, a local company, just going back to our initial investors that were in the community and saying, like, look, we don't know if any stimulus is coming at that point in early December, because there was no indication that it would. It did, thankfully, but I'm with you. We don't sort of trust the government officials at any of the 3 levels, unfortunately, to adequately give us the help that we need, or at least alert us to where that help is coming from.
I want to touch on vaccines for a moment. Restaurant workers in Massachusetts were eligible for the vaccine on March 22nd. I'm curious what this has meant for you and your restaurant. And Joanne, I know you alluded to this earlier, but how has it changed how you've had to monitor safety or mask wearing in your restaurant?
Yes, we've already had discussions with our management teams about how to deal with guests who come in without a mask and say, oh, but I'm vaccinated. You know, we've done a ton of research and it's still unsure. Even if you're vaccinated, you can still harbor the virus possibly and pass it on. And so until everybody is vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask. And as much as we can, you know, through this forum and through the news and government, just continue to spread that, that would be really helpful, because it's hard for our teams to, they're all trained now to tell somebody to please put on the mask, but then it's hard when the person starts to push back. And it starts to get, it can get contentious, and it doesn't need to be. In terms of finally getting approval to get the vaccine, it's obviously a huge relief for everybody. I don't know that everybody is planning on getting vaccinated, which is disappointing, but we're doing our very best to incentivize everybody to get vaccinated. One thing that I have found really shocking is, you know, there's this pre-registered website that you can go on to. So a lot of our team members are just waiting. They've pre-registered and now they're just sitting by their phones waiting. And then we found that there's a phone number that you can call. And so if you call and you wait on hold, then the person on the other line will book you 2 appointments. And so literally we are doing this. Like, I'll be in the middle of a meeting and I'll just put this phone number on, go on hold and wait until somebody picks up. And then I physically pass it over to a team member and say, okay, if you want to book an appointment here, this person's going to help you. And it just seems really crazy that this is how we are trying to vaccinate our teams. You know, it's just like this random, oh, I happen to be here with a phone and I can call. So I wish there was more, just a better, easier way for everybody to get vaccinated. But obviously it's a huge relief for all of us.
Yeah, I would echo that, especially like trying to find ways for staff members to get vaccinated. So as many people know, in restaurant industry, we have a variety of cultures and backgrounds that are in kitchens or in the front of the house or wherever it may be. And I think that if we as a society are talking about combating vaccine distrust, or it's really sketchy when we're like, hey, I can get you an appointment through a Twitter bot in a Google form that I found. which is what we've been using, and it's worked. But that doesn't exactly give someone who's unfamiliar or on the fence about this process any more degree of a confidence, knowing that like I'm getting some back alley vaccine when it's in fact, it's totally legit. It's just hard to really sell confidence in that to the staff. So that's definitely been a challenge in rolling out. In terms of the customer facing side of things with people wearing masks, I mean, we've been so vigilant about telling people to wear a mask, we're just not deviating from that whatsoever. I think the big challenge there is getting guests to understand that we can't be mask police, and to add the idea of like verifying vaccinations from guest to guest is just not something that's reasonable to put on this industry. However, there is good news that we're getting vaccinated ourselves, and I think that only really comes into play in terms of how you balance that, what Joanne referred to earlier is that drive for like, let's go max out on covers, and also like, does your staff feel as though you're doing that safely? As the staff becomes vaccinated, it allows us to go more to the letter of the law of the regulation, whereas right now, we're still a few step back of what the regulations may say. So we put 8 distance feet between tables versus 6 because that's a point of competition. If we can be the safest restaurant, that's actually an advantage for us. As the staff becomes vaccinated, as ownership, we feel a little bit more confident saying like, all right, now let's go and like figure out exactly how many seats we can get in there, but still abiding by code and keeping guests safe, because you know that your staff won't be, at risk. So that helps and alleviates that a little bit, but definitely still a lot of challenges arising with the vaccine. And yeah, just booking appointments in general, having them be all sort of, backdoor ways of getting them is less than ideal.
Great. Bessie, did you have anything to add to that at all?
No, I think that hits it in the nail. I mean, I had to be on the phone for 2 hours to get my own appointment, so that's just a reflection. And I speak fluent English, fluent Spanish. I filled out the form on the website. I did the Twitter bot as well. It's just like, it's almost like Amazing Race for the vaccine. So at this point, we just gotta be patient, but I really sincerely do believe vaccinations and reopenings have to go hand in hand. That's not a popular opinion, and I've gotten a lot of heat on that as well, but it's for the safety of my people,
I want to look forward a bit as to kind of what are some of the more permanent changes that you see happening in the restaurant industry as a result of this past year. I know a few of you have done and continue to do, online baking and beer tasting classes, and I'm curious if you're going to be continuing those, and also what are some other changes that you see as being permanent fixtures?
Well, I think for us, this was the first year, literally in January, after the state passed a cap on delivery fee services. This was the first time in 20 years of operations that we finally said, okay, let's use them. Because this is gonna make me sound bad, but because at this point we were just like, all right, you want something, I'm getting something. You're not just gonna take advantage of me. But a lot of restaurants obviously have not been that patient or lucky, right? Because they have to compete. So I think that putting our services and our quality at the forefront is something that will have to be permanent moving forward. And that means obviously we addressed costs earlier. We're spending more, not just on PPE, but also on food itself. It's increased, the prices have increased. So I think there has to be a reality that food cost is gonna go up, as will our effort to pay our teams more, because we've realized, right, they don't have a safety net. Wage workers aren't rich, and they're certainly not lazy, and they certainly need better pay. So for us at the restaurant, it is a conscious decision to be very aware of sizes, of portions, of pricing, of what we're using, and what we can let go of the menu or of even supplies, to be able to have that manageable cost of operation. But it is a reality that I feel a lot of other restaurants have to put at the forefront. This is a valuable product. And for that reason, I am treating it as such. We can no longer let third-party delivery services or third-party booking services for a reservation or any other sort of situation make us continue being the industry that has the lowest profit margin around.
Yeah, I think in terms of permanent changes going forward, there's some, like a lot that she alluded to just now, but also some, some small ones like the trifold menu. I think that like the way we present things in the restaurant itself is probably different permanently. There are definitely some advantages to our customer base is getting more used to things that are digital, like digital menus, digital interactions. It's just less overall paper. So small changes there. And things in terms of big changes that move toward takeout, it definitely affects menu writing, especially going into the winter. Like I wasn't going to put something on the menu that wouldn't translate well to go. Like I didn't sell a ton of mussels this winter, for example, because that's not exactly the greatest dish sent through a driver. So I think, getting used to that makes me wonder about the future of some of the more like fine dining like establishments that people have gotten so used to being able to get almost anything delivered to them on a couch. So to have your product really well transitioned to that sort of like, it still tastes good when it's delivered is a big part of food engineering that we all go through when we write menus and you try to think of what it is. Because ultimately, if you get takeout from one of us moving forward or in the future and the packaging was poor, or the quality isn't there, you're not going to think, oh yeah, of course, like this wouldn't do well sitting 45 minutes. You're going to think, well, that wasn't great. I'm going to go somewhere else next time. So it definitely introduced the importance of packaging and understand cost behind packaging as well, which is something that usually isn't a consideration. We just think it's on a plate, we have warewashing, and that's pretty much all it's at. So I see that as being a big permanent thing. And then at least for the next year or so, and maybe more permanent, is we've seen, at least I've seen from just what we're selling on a regular basis, more of a shift towards healthier considerations, and especially in that category, plant-based items. And I think part of that can be attributed to the fact that people want to be able to have healthy options that they can either get at home or and become used to some of these things as well. They want to sort of get out again and get healthy and exercising after this. I think health is a big consideration when you're in the middle of a pandemic, naturally so. You want to prioritize that. So I think that's definitely been a permanent change as well.
Jonathan, I think it's so funny that you said that you took off mussels from your menu, because we did the same. We had mussels. We have a lemongrass mussel dish that's been on our menu since we opened, and midway through we were like, this is not traveling. Like it's just not working. We couldn't find a takeout container big enough, and so it just didn't work. I think I think we're going to see a lot of increase in digital ordering and a lot more people doing takeout. I think we all agree to that. One of the things we're going to be trying at Flower is order and pay at the table, where you just go directly to the table. The QR code is there. You scan the QR code, you go ahead and place your order, you pay, and then we bring the food out. It's going to be a lot more efficient for us. It's also for me a little bit like I'm kind of on the fence because I worry about the lack of guests and team interaction. Like it just is going to be so automated. It just feels a little impersonal, but I think everybody at this point is used to using QR codes. And so it does allow us an opportunity to offer more ways for people to order from us with fewer interactions. And I think that's what's been so challenging overall for all of us, is that our business is interacting with people, and yet we're doing everything we can to minimize that interaction. It's crazy. Other things that I think will continue to hopefully stay permanent is the increase in tipping on takeout. No longer, in the past, some people tipped on takeout, but not a lot. But now we're seeing over the past year, people have been really wonderful and tipping on takeout, even though they're not coming in and sitting down. And that's been hugely helpful for us in order to continue to pay servers and kitchen with increased tipping.
And I just want to add to the point that both chefs shared. smaller communities and communities of color that have like a small restaurant that maybe it's not a sit down or it's just like a counter service or something like that. These permanent solutions maybe are not available to them, right? Again, because of the language barrier or because their business is just so small that they are still maybe just serving on takeout containers as they did from the beginning. But my concern with those businesses is that customers won't be encouraged to continue supporting them because they won't see this generic, not to say like flashy, but much more elegant way of handling the pandemic in the long term, right? Even as more reopenings happen and more people get vaccinated. So I think that whatever permanent solutions there are, we're still going to see the inequity across communities. And we have to be very aware as consumers so that we don't shut the door on a business that is still trying to survive, but maybe they are not equipped with the tools or the knowledge to do it like we are.
Bessie, that's a great point. And I want to jump into some reader questions. And one of them directly alludes to this. We have a lot of great questions, so I want to get to as many as I can. But one reader wrote in and asked, how can we help minority-owned restaurants that have truly suffered during the pandemic? Bessie, I know that you worked a lot with Massachusetts Restaurant United on this, and you've talked about this with them. Do you want to kind of jump into that a little bit more, discuss that a little more?
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, not to say that white-owned businesses don't deserve help. Of course they do. Let's just put that out there for anyone who might feel touchy about the subject. However, historically, funding and resources for minority-owned businesses have always been harder to obtain. That is why, for someone like me who is a minority, and we do have a minority restaurant, it is a sensitive area of like, hey, we're here, we need help. So I think the best way that we could support our minority businesses is obviously by becoming patrons of your local minority restaurant. That is first and foremost, giving them a chance, and giving them a chance when you don't see the same service or the same perks or takeout containers that you may see at other restaurants, right? It's just as simple as that. Still give them a chance. And then also becoming aware that their needs are vastly different. Not to get too political, but something as simple as our government or local government operating in a better basis so that we have accessible childcare service and transportation, because our employees literally cannot get to our restaurants without that. I have 3 women that still haven't been able to return to work because they don't have reliable childcare. So imagine that at a smaller scale. You're talking about the owner of a little pupusa shop in East Boston, or maybe like somewhere out there in Waltham, or I don't know, somewhere in our districts, that can't open their business or can't operate at full hours because they too don't have reliable childcare service. It can be just as simple as that. So really, customers becoming our advocates and our allies is the best that they can do to also support minority-owned restaurants or minority-owned businesses in general, because our needs are vastly different, not just from lack of fluent English speaking, but from lack of resources, all the way from internet service and computers to basic transportation, you know, and all the gamma that is in between of that, and obviously better pay. That's the core of the issue. Also for small business owners who probably work over 80 hours a week and don't have healthcare. So something as simple as that. So.
We also received a lot of questions about tipping. And one of them was, what is the current etiquette or best practice for tipping with takeout and delivery? And I'm curious to hear too, has the pandemic raised any other issues around tipping at all? John, do you want to jump in on that one? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I think that we've been fortunate for the most part in seeing an increase in tipping to takeout orders through the pandemic, because a lot of people realize that you're sort of helping support the service staff that isn't able to serve people on site. So we've definitely seen an increase of that, and we're hoping that does stay permanent, because there is a lot that goes into even serving on a takeout level. So we're hoping that that continues in terms of impact to the tipping system. In terms of other issues around tipping, haven't seen too much of an impact there. I think the overall impact has just been, people understand that it's not the same as just like a standard $3 or $4 that you might give to a delivery driver. That there's a whole team of people like preparing those things, packaging, and all these other elements that people go for.
Joanne, did you want to add anything to that at all?
In terms of, you know, what is the current etiquette or best practice, I think if you get takeout now, it seems that people are tipping as if they're sitting in the restaurant, and that's been helpful, as John said, you know, so that we can tip our servers. I think something that has come up is, you know, when you're doing only takeout, like we currently are at Myers and Chang, and you're getting takeout tips, we made the choice to start sharing some of the tips with the kitchen. And now we're segueing away from that model, because we're going to go back to having servers and patio tables, and at some point indoor dining. And that has definitely raised some issues, you know, like how do we've always wanted to try to figure out how we can pay the kitchen with some of the tips that guests are tipping. But it's not something that we, the restaurant, can dictate. And so it's a tricky line, you know, money's sensitive for everybody. And if you're a server, you make most of your money on tips, and it can be very uncertain. And so it can be a touchy subject. So that has definitely come up. Like the old system was not necessarily the best system, but it was a known system. And now the uncertainty of a possible new system, I think, is really starting to stir the pot a little bit.
And just to echo that and add in something that you made me think of when you said that as well is, it goes to show you that legislation behind what the employer and how we can assign tips is clearly outdated and behind as well. I mean, right now in the state of Massachusetts, it's illegal to include kitchen workers in the tip pool directly. There are ways to sort of reclassify that as revenue sharing or other things, but ultimately we shouldn't have to be dodging around bureaucratic barricades to be able to adjust the business model to the way it's changed in the pandemic. And that's true. A lot of the service that is involved with takeout is back of the house in nature. It's, you know, like the line cook itself is the one packaging in her box and getting all these things together. And it would provide a great opportunity if we could even assign just like takeout tips to say it's split all over the house instead of just for the front of the house. So I think revisiting and re-examining our current set of legislature over how we distribute tips might be something that would be prudent moving forward.
This is a bit of a crystal ball question, I guess, but when do you see your restaurant and the industry at large getting to a place of stability? What does a successful recovery, I guess, look like to you? And when might that be happening?
I don't see it happening for a year. I hate to say that. I would love to say the fall. Everything's going to be back to normal in the fall, but I think it's going to be about a year from now when things start to feel normal. But again, I would love to be proven wrong. I'll say next year, but cross my fingers for the fall.
Well, I think it's funny, right? Because for us, we worked so hard to get out of the suburbs and then make it to the city. And now that we're in the city, everybody's working from home in the suburbs. So really at this point, we're like, should we go back to the suburbs? I mean, we're in the middle of the financial district, a block away from Faneuil Hall. There's no tourists, there's no people in the offices. What's going to happen to those restaurants? You know, it's a whammy. So we don't know until those people return when normalcy will return. And to be frank, so many people are now realizing that working from home is a possibility, and that you can trust your employees to work from home and still have a successful operating business. That I don't envision offices being like 100% capacity for the next year as well. you know, just being realistic. People are not going to give that up now that they know they can do it. So I think 1 year to maybe even 2 years. I've been saying we're not going to see a stable restaurant industry until 3 years from now, precisely because of all the factors. And if you want to say restaurant industry, it includes the little guys like us, right? Not just the larger restaurants. So it really is a loaded question. I would love to say in the fall as well, but I think probably a year until more people return to offices for us that we are downtown in the city areas, restaurants like ours.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question in that we have to figure out, well, what does it mean to be recovered? I mean, to some extent, I anticipate for our restaurants, for example, to be back to, you know, our revenue levels that we're at last summer, this summer, probably hopefully getting past them as well a little bit. We're in a unique situation. We had opened our doors for the first time in November of 2019. We've had a patio, never opened a patio without COVID. So we've actually never seen I don't even know what a full capacity restaurant looks like yet. I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's great. We're really excited to have that one day, but we haven't gotten there. The most we've done, we're permitted for, I think, 170 people, and the most we've been able to allow is 114 for the last 17 months. So it depends on your definition of what it means to be back and recovered. I think it's going to be different long term. It's going to be different. It's going to take a long time for all the restaurants that closed while none of them are opening, because I'm imagining that there weren't a lot of new SBA loans being doled out for new restaurants. It's going to take a long time for just that oversaturation to return, because we were at an oversaturated point prior to lockdown. We're probably underserved now. So it'll take years to get to that point. And then also to Bessie's point about offices as well, like that business model seems so outdated now. And coming from somebody who's not in that industry, of course, but if you were able to achieve the same productivity without having to pay an office space and the lease and all that stuff, then you may just stick with that permanently if you're a lot of different businesses. And if that's the case, then that's our, you know, we opened up next to New Balance and WGBH, and we're looking at like, oh, well, when that office clears out for lunch, they're going to come here. But if there's no office to clear out for lunch, that really changes your lunch aspect. So will it ever be the same as it was in, you know, February of 2019? Probably not. But I think that the restaurant industry will have recovered, or when it does recover, it will have done so by learning to and have it successfully diversified its income streams by saying, we're going to have more available on takeout to replace the fact that, you know, lunch rushes aren't happening anymore. So I think that, you know, depending on your definition in terms of being stable enough to feel like you're not white knuckle driving through a pandemic, probably some point mid to late summer, early fall. But to be able to say it returned to any semblance of what it was prior, you're looking at 2 to 5 years, I would imagine.
We have time for a couple more reader questions. One of them was, what are your thoughts on opening a new restaurant or bakery during the pandemic or shortly after? Is that a good idea? Joanne, I think you opened a branch in Beacon Hill.
We did. We opened our 9th bakery in October of last year, 2020. But we did that because we had started the build out in January of 2020. We were supposed to open in April. You know, we shut down, you know, like everybody else. And then we didn't pick construction back up until I think mid-June or even end of June, early July. We just didn't know where the money was going to come from. We didn't know anything. So it has been interesting. We opened up right next to Mass General, which is a good place to open when there's a pandemic. And it has been busy, but we don't have guests inside dining. So we're trying to figure out how to make that transition. But it's challenging. You know, we hired a whole new crew of people, none of whom I've physically seen their faces. So I know what they look like from here up. And when they take their mask down during their staff break, I don't know who they are. So that's been really weird. But it's always hard to open a new place. And I think with the added levels of everything COVID, it's made it, you know, triply, quadruply challenged. But we're there. We're still there. We're, you know, growing every day, and hopefully soon we'll have patio and indoor and all that good stuff.
I mean, we have no intention of opening another one. Like I said, I mean, like maybe we would go back to the suburbs, but that would be a stretch. No, but I think, you know, the owners of Jamaica Me Hungry, they had a food truck and they opened their brick and mortar last year, or were in the process of opening. And it was really inspiring because they're a wonderful Jamaican couple. They just had a baby girl. She's adorable. And so, I mean, the spirit is still there, right? It's just the ability to figure out the logistics and the funding. And I think if anything, if anyone wants to open a restaurant post-pandemic, it might be slightly easier now because they can build whatever model they want. They can choose to say, we're only going to be takeout, or we're going to be eating here, but with these limitations. I mean, right now we have carte blanche essentially to redo the systems that we had. Like it's been said before, the systems don't work. We have plenty of proof of it now. So, you know, in my dream world, do I open a restaurant? Sure, it would definitely have a patio. That's just awesome, not just because of COVID, but it would also pay at least $50 an hour to start to my employees, which means my menu would be a little higher price, but that would be this close to customers. And we would have free delivery if possible, with the condition that customers actually give a good tip to my employees. You know, like that's a dream world. But can it happen? Yes, it can. Again, it just goes down to community. Do you actually want to make this happen? Because it can happen. It's just a matter of, do we want to make it happen?
I think I can definitely confirm that as well. Having, as I just said, we just barely opened and got through the fight that it is to open a restaurant without the pandemic being the issue. We just sort of got there and finally opened. Our brewery operation didn't open until the following November because we had about a 24-month utility upgrade order, which was excessive. But I think as an entrepreneur, when you are starting out, like that process of opening a restaurant, you'll never see more curveballs and twists and turns and pivots than you do during those times. And so if you're able to twist and turn and pivot through all of that and through, you know, the final stages of this pandemic, then it's worth it to just keep hanging on. It's good exercise. Don't think that by the time you open your doors and you made it pivoting through a pandemic, that's the last of it. That means that you're good at it and you should keep at it. So I think that would be, I don't think you should be discouraged. I think there's definitely a need for more restaurants and more entrepreneurs that want to do it. And I think opening in this climate just gives you a more realistic glimpse of what that day-to-day brinksmanship lifestyle is like.
Great. Well, we need to start wrapping up. And one reader had a bit of an optimistic question that I thought we could end on. And it is, what, if any, positive changes has the pandemic brought to your business? On Friday, when we were all chatting, Joanne, you mentioned something along the lines of all restaurant people are positive people. So in that spirit, if you all wanted to kind of name a couple of things that were maybe surprisingly positive that came out of this, if at all.
I mean, yeah, I'll reiterate. I think all restaurant people are optimistic. We open our doors every day and we hope and know and pray that people will come through the doors and that they'll like what we have. And we go through a service and then we close the doors and then we wake up the next day excited to do it again. There's a certain amount of uncertainty to what we do. And the fact that we wake up every day and excited and happy to do it, I think just speaks to our optimistic nature. I think that positive things that have come out of the pandemic are things that we've already kind of touched on. Just watching the teams come together and be so versatile and resilient and optimistic. And I mean, I had a manager come to me, this must've been 3 or 4 months ago, kind of in the middle of the winter. So maybe it was 2 months ago. And we'd been talking about how, you know, we're not really sure about our financial situation. It's really touch and go. And he looked at me and he said, look, you know, I looked at my bank account and I'm okay for a couple of months. So if you want to stop paying me for a couple of months, I'm happy to do that. And my heart just, you know, burst. I was just like, you don't need to do that. Thank you. But just the amount of, I guess just, you know, we talk a lot about the restaurant and the bakery being a family, but you really saw it come together, you know, last year. And then I also think a positive is that the community at large, you know, everybody loves to go out to eat, loves restaurants. And I think not having restaurants for a year has made everybody that much more appreciative of what it is that the restaurant community does to Boston and to the neighborhood, you know, and I think Bessie started off talking about that. And I think that is, it's something that it's one of the reasons why we do what we do. And to have everybody kind of come together and look at the restaurants that are no longer open or that are just limping along and saying, wow, this can't keep happening. We've got to help the restaurants has been really uplifting, and we certainly appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been some positive things through the community. I do think that we've touched upon a lot of them throughout the course of this hour as well. But I think that one thing that I hadn't mentioned from a positive aspect, well, a couple really, is one is the pliability of customers. People are really open to new ideas, much more so than they had been previously. And maybe that's also a great way for us to combat sort of the equity issues that arise and supporting minority-owned businesses too. Just because you haven't necessarily become familiar with the dish, like people are a little bit more willing to try something new and try something that isn't marketed to them in such like an obvious way. So I'm hoping that that really has a good effect. And then also I'm hoping that this pandemic has really increased the value of human interaction. We've seen for over the course of a decade, it's much more easier to come into a bar and you might not even know there's anyone around you at all. You might be too deep at the bar, but you might be sitting at that bar as a customer, myself included, you know, buried in the social media stream, maybe even earbuds in, very little human interaction. And it was very devalued. And I think maybe having this removed for a year, you're seeing people get more excited about striking up a conversation with a bartender in the future, or maybe the person next to you at the bar is, you know, watching the same game you are and you want to chime in and you have a real human contact experience. And you just can't put a price on that. And I'm hoping that once we all get out to see each other, we have a little bit more of a priority on making sure that we have that nice human interaction.
You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, because I'm not a chef, I didn't go to culinary school. My mom's a lawyer. We opened the restaurant because she missed her food and she couldn't work here as a lawyer because I was going to college. So it's the story of a lot of immigrants, right? And so that resilience really is one that lives within our industry. And I second that, you know, restaurant people are happy people because, I mean, we've seen it all or we're going to see it all. You know, and that is an everyday experience. It's just like, okay, well, what's going to happen today? But I think for me, the beginning of the pandemic was a really big unknown, that it was very anxiety inducing. And I think we have to be aware that all of us, you know, we've been through a lot and we're still here. You know, that takes a lot of credit that we're willing to still be here fighting. And for me, I'm very lucky that I have my mom, you know, she's the owner of the restaurant. She's the never ending fighter. And from the beginning of this, she said, we're not closing. Like, we've been through hell and back. This isn't going to close us, right? But I think that was a mentality of a lot of us. And it's heartbreaking to know that so many restaurants did close, but the ones that are still there, they're the inspiring and the motivators to hopefully reopen and to hopefully bring those places that did close back. And that goes to the second point. All of us have that fighter, like my mom, right? That's our engine to like keep going, whether it's one of our employees or whether it's a customer, that it goes down to community again. That is the point of all of this. If there is one lesson that I learned, was how important our community is and standing up for each other. And it really will go down to that again as we rebuild. It's just, do we all eat, breathe, and go to the bathroom? So if we keep that logistic, it goes down to the community. What do we want to see in our neighborhood and how do we want to be part of it?
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and expertise today. This was a really fantastic conversation, and I really appreciate you all being here. To our attendees, you know, if you can support the restaurants, support all our local independent restaurants as they navigate through this really difficult time. And thank you so much for listening in. And with that, I do want to turn it over again to Dan Schertzer with Capital One Café for some closing remarks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. What an incredible conversation. And I feel so privileged to be part of it. It was super engaging, super enlightening, and like I wanted to go on for the rest of the day. So, just thank you so much. We've never been more proud to support our local restaurant community, and we'll continue to do so. As we mentioned earlier at Capital One, we are focused on helping our communities stress less through programs and information to help make their lives easier, including our signature money coaching program. Whether you bank with us or not, you can take advantage of money coaching, which is a free program that pairs you with a certified coach. It's like life coaching for your money, as wild as that sounds. It's actually an amazing thing. You get the opportunity to create a personalized action plan that connects with your life and money goals. To learn more about the program and the Café experience, visit CapitalOne.com local. Restaurants play such an important role in our lives, not just economically or culinarily. Is that a word, culinarily? But perhaps most importantly, building our communities and reconnecting us through this pandemic, as our guests have commented so beautifully. Please make sure to take care of yourself by caring for your local restaurants. Thank you, Bessie, Joanne, Jonathan, Aaron, and the Boston Globe. And thank you again to everyone who's joined us today. Have a great day. Be safe.